part of 3 nights.
This week on Sneak Previews, our annual Best of the Year show, where we give you our sometimes very different lists of the best and the worst movie achievements of 1994. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Well, that, of course, is what Charles Dickens wrote in A Tale of Two Cities, and it's certainly true for the movie year 1994. Most critics would agree that the overall quality of films declined somewhat from last year. But among the more than 200 titles we reviewed, we still found some shining examples of artistry and awfulness. We'll each share those choices with you on this week's special show, as we look at the best and the worst movies of 1994. I'm Jeffrey Lyons.
And I'm Michael Medved, and I get the first crack at presenting movies from my 10 best list, named here in the order in which those films were released. And first up is a great movie from the very beginning of last year that almost everybody seems to have forgotten about. It's called Fiorile, and it's a sweeping, gorgeously cinematic Italian epic from the brilliant filmmaking team, the Taviani brothers. It tells a haunting story of 5 generations of a wealthy but cursed family in Tuscany, moving from the days of the French Revolution right down to the present. The Lion King ruled at the box office, and it richly deserved its regal popularity, with a lively musical score, surprising emotional depth, and some of the best animation in movie history. And Forrest Gump was another picture with legs that never ran out of energy at the box office or on screen, offering warmth, humor, originality, and a juicy chocolate sampler full of great performances.
I ran to get where I was going. I never thought it would take me anywhere.
Unlike Forrest Gump or The Lion King, The Last Klezmer was hardly a box office smash. In fact, it only opened so far in a few cities across the country. But it's a wonderful documentary set in current-day Poland about a Holocaust survivor named Leopold Kozlowski, an irrepressible personality who devotes all his energy to keeping alive traditional Jewish folk music, even though all his students today happen to be Polish Catholics. Princess Caribou was another little teen delight, starring Phoebe Cates in an amazing true story set in England in 1817. She plays a mysterious girl who turns up speaking an unknown language and claims she's a shipwrecked South Seas princess. She's a big social success, even dancing at the royal court. But Stephen Ray plays a skeptical journalist who thinks he's onto a hoax.
Stop it! No ordinary paper. Any idea of the danger of reading something? What happened to you. I know you think this is all an amusement, but it's a mad, dangerous thing you're doing. Princess! May we have the pleasure of the next dance?
First 5 entries in your list, Michael. There's a carefully chosen word.
Is weird the word you're really looking
for?
for?
I wasn't surprised, of course, that you picked The Lion King and Forrest Gump. Everybody loves those movies. I was a little surprised that you picked Princess Caribou, a movie which I liked, but which played 2 weeks and never found its audience.
And that's precisely why I picked it, because this is a film that deserved more attention than it got when it played in theaters.
Right?
And now that it's available on home video, I think everybody should see it. It's an absolutely enchanting fairy tale that delighted my 8-year-old daughter just as much as it pleased me. Phoebe Cates, I thought, gave one of the finest performances performances by any actress I've seen this year. She keeps you guessing right up to the last minute whether this girl is who she pretends to be. And her husband, Kevin Kline, is hilarious
very
in a
good
supporting role.
Very good playing off her, particularly when you know that they are in real life husband and wife. Another film that you did pick that I really liked seeing on your list was Tia Relay, opened very early in the year, and there's a scene in this movie which shows how they go from one generation to another. Family is driving in the station wagon in Italy, I think it is, and then over the ridge, suddenly you see some soldiers from the Napoleonic era, and they make the transition brilliantly, and that just gets you into the mood of this sweeping epic.
Well, it's a vision. It's a haunting film about a family's curse, about choosing gold over ideals 200 years ago and the impact that has on all your descendants. But speaking about sort of a curse and an impact lastingly, nobody saw The Last Klezmer either, but this is a documentary that was unforgettable to me because it's not just about a passion for music and a passion for life with a wonderful main character, but it pays tribute to what happened to him in the Holocaust. There's a moving sequence where he goes back to revisit the graves of his parents who were murdered in front of his eyes, and it's for the first time since he saw those murders, and I have never seen such a moving Holocaust film except for Schindler's List.
Very strange year, 94, because we're finding little gems that we might not have picked in an ordinary year with one inescapable blockbuster after another. There weren't that many this year, so let's press on. And now it's my turn to present the first 5 of my top 10 of the year, starting off with a delightful romantic comedy which introduced itself in springtime, the perfect season for love.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Is one of these?
As you can infer from its title, 4 Weddings and a Funeral invited us to several joyful and sad ceremonies, tracing the growing attraction between Hugh Grant, a bubbling shy Englishman, and Andie MacDowell, a smiling American beauty he keeps running into at these events. By the end of the movie, we know these characters so well, we hope we might get invited to their weddings. I too picked The Lion King, of course, which introduced a jungle full of lovable characters, along with 6 terrific Elton John songs, including one with a Swahili title meaning no worries.
Hakuna Matata?
Yeah, it's our motto.
What's a motto?
Nothing. What's the matter with you?
Or it's a kiss.
And Forrest Gump makes my best of the year list too, with a sensational performance by Tom Hanks as an honest, down-to-earth man from Alabama who turns up at all the important events of the last 30 years. But he's also capable of deep-felt emotions, especially towards his lifelong friend, played by Robin Wright. And though saddled with an IQ of just 75, Forrest Gump shows a genius for love.
Will you marry me? I'd make a good husband, Jenny.
You would, boy.
You won't marry me.
You don't want to marry.
Why don't you love me, Jenny? I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is.
I also adored Barcelona, writer-director Whit Stillman's witty, sophisticated look at a suave pair of expatriate American yuppies, cousins who live in that most cosmopolitan Spanish city in the post-Franco era of the early 80s. As with Stillman's other movie, Metropolitan, several years ago, Barcelona was thoughtful, devilishly funny, and for my money, the year's most intelligent screenplay. The almost unpronounceable title of The Shawshank Redemption may have kept large audiences away, but they missed a compelling, absorbing drama set in the Maine State Penitentiary in the 1940s and 50s, and taken from a Stephen King novella. Morgan Freeman plays a convict serving a long stretch, intrigued by the arrival one day of Tim Robbins, who plays another convict, a young, intelligent banker convicted of 2 murders, but with grand ideas about life. Thus begins a remarkable, inspiring friendship.
I've been in here most of my life. I'm an institutional man now. It usually comes down to a simple choice. Continue living. You get what you die.
Well, there's only one title so far on your list that I've got to part company with strongly, and that is The Shawshank Redemption. I thought this was a painfully predictable, shallow prison movie where I almost expected to see Jimmy Cagney turning up, banging his tin plate, and that's all.
Jimmy Cagney. You know, I just, Michael, and I've done no other movie this year, and I found it absorbing. I urge you to see it again on video. No one saw it in a wide audience in theaters, and I think it deserves a second chance.
Well, the reason I don't think it deserves a second chance is it's so sentimental about its view of prison life. Every one of these prisoners are like the guys at a boys' camp. They're so sweet and angelic. The only mean characters whole film are one homosexual rapist in the prison, and then, of course, the warden and the guards,
And
who are
the
all
gang of
caricatures.
too, but it's not a prison movie. I viewed it as a movie about friendship, and the prison setting was almost incidental.
Well, to me, a very shallow one, despite the good performance by Morgan Freeman. The film here where I most strongly agree with you, other than, of course, Forrest Gump and Lion King, which are obvious choices, is Barcelona.
Isn't it wonderful?
And
Yeah.
it's so absolutely delightful. Some of the most quirky characters you'll ever see by actors who are very little known. And it's one of those films, again, that I think people are going to watch with pleasure even 10 years from
And
now.
I hope Rich Stillman keeps using these actors again and again, forms his own company. Paul Sorvino's daughter is in it playing a Spanish girl. A lot of new faces.
And talk about
the
new
screenplay of the
talk
year.
about new faces. Hugh Grant becomes a Cary Grant of his generation with Four Weddings and a Funeral. An absolutely delightful film and the most successful film ever made in England in box office terms in this country. The only reason I didn't pick it for my list is I thought The Four Weddings worked a little bit better than The Funeral, which got just a tad maudlin for my taste.
I saw that one twice, as I recall, as well. That's 8 weddings and 2 funerals I went to this year.
But with that kind of characterization and the wonderful performances you have from everybody in that film, you can't go wrong. Well, now to finish off the list of my top 10, starting here with a movie that whets your appetite, not only for good food, but for life itself. It's called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and it's from director Ang Lee, who did last year's foreign film Oscar winner, The Wedding Banquet. Once again, he serves up a cinematic feast with perhaps the year's best ensemble acting. In a bittersweet tale of a widower chef in Taiwan living with his 3 beautiful, devoted, but sometimes rebellious daughters who are longing for lives of their own. Hoop Dreams offers a definitive demonstration that real life can be more absorbing than fiction, showing 7 years in the lives of 2 aspiring inner-city athletes from Chicago. In this scene, the boys look on with starry eyes as the legendary basketball coach at their new high school introduces that school's most famous alumnus.
Introduce you as graduates of St. Joe's, high school All-American, All-American from Indiana University, 5-time NBA All-Star, Isaiah Thomas. In everybody's neighborhood, there's a guy who can really play, shoot the lights on, every time down court. Then he goes to St. Joseph High School, and the guy gets cut. Say, Tom was real good. Why did he get cut? He Tom to learn the fundamentals of team basketball, which is what you're learning how to play.
Told my daddy that he knew I could play, so he just had to play me hard.
Geritol presents the exciting quiz program, 21.
Quiz show focused on a different sort of game, the popular but rigged 1950s quiz show 21 that made an overnight star of a brainy professor named Charles Van Doren. Director Robert Redford distorted some facts and personalities, but the script and the acting were taut and terrific. Near the end of the year, Little Women offered one of the few saving graces to Hollywood's otherwise disappointing Christmas season. This latest version of the classic novel glowingly recreates an earlier age without ever letting sets or costumes overwhelm wonderful performances, led by Winona Ryder and Susan Sarandon. There's never been a more moving tribute to the bond between loving sisters. And finally, The Madness of King George, the profoundly moving true story of King George III of England, brilliantly played by Nigel Hawthorne. The monarch's raging insanity led to a royal crisis, as a no-nonsense doctor, played by Ian Holm, tries to get the king under control.
How big? Just some graveyard first. Very well. If your majesty will not behave, you must be restrained. When fellows were induced to talk, they were shown first the instruments of their torture. The king has chosen instruments of his. Induced them not to
prediction, Michael. I think Nigel Hawthorne will be nominated for an Oscar and give Tom Hanks some serious competition. The way F. Murray Abraham was a stage actor and won for Amadeus a few years ago, people will not know who Nigel Hawthorne is until he gets nominated and they see this magnificent
Well, anybody who sees this performance will remember Nigel Hawthorne. I can't remember being more deeply moved by one actor's work than I was here. And, you know, partially it kept reminding me of the situation with my own grandmother, may she rest in peace. She had Alzheimer's disease, and I remember at the early stages of her course, you could sort of see a light in her eyes, where she could sort of occasionally recognize the tragedy of her own situation. He captures that on screen, and in a gorgeous, lush film that is remarkably true to the historical sources and what actually happened.
I would have picked this one, I would have picked Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and I would have picked especially Little Women had I not been restricted to the traditional 10 best of the year. Little Women is a delightful movie. It's the third cinematic version. There was also a TV version, but it has an identity all its own and has a relevance to today and magnificent performances by the cast.
Julian Armstrong, the Australian director, made everything come to life here. Last year, remember, Age of Innocence, a lot of people loved. That was the kind of period piece where it sort of focused on the best in the costumes.
This one doesn't move slowly the way that one
these
does.
are people. This feels like the family next door, even though it's dramatizing the 1860s. And, you know, Susan Sarandon, you talk about Oscar nominations.
She's long overdue.
Best supporting actress for that movie.
I want to be her agent. Every year I think this woman deserves an Oscar. Each year I'm sure she's going to get it. She is wonderful in the movie. And Eat, Drink, Man, Woman is a movie which is still around, playing in so-called art houses and I guess in the university film societies. It's a wonderful little movie, and it's got an absorbing story and wonderful characters.
And you talk about family values, the way that family hangs together and the relationship between father and daughter is a gorgeous
To
film.
say nothing of those dishes. Well, now to complete...
You mean the daughters of
Not
food?
the daughters, the food,
Okay.
Michael. Let's not be chauvinistic. And now to complete my list of the year's best. My next entry is also one Michael liked, and which I think is one of the best documentaries ever made. For me, Hoop Dreams has a lot to say about how organized athletics is run in this country, unfairly putting enormous pressure on young, inexperienced athletes to succeed.
Work hard at the grades, and if you work hard at basketball, then I would be able to help you as far as going to college.
The Swan Princess is a gorgeous and touching animated fairy tale about a princess cast under a spell by an evil enchanter. Loosely based on Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, the movie is filled with delightful characters and beautiful songs. Prince Derek is the one she loves, and he tries desperately to break the spell, but in the meantime, his mother insists he meet a parade of other eligible princesses, hoping to woo him away.
Where have you been all my life? Princesses on the parade. It's the pride of her community. It's a golden opportunity.
Just that thought that comes hysterical. Face this choice that's hysterical.
Play the party. Play the party. Being glamorous, luminous, dazzling. Princesses on parade.
The eeriest movie of the year was also one of the best, Heavenly Creatures, the true story of a pair of schoolgirls in New Zealand in the early 50s who exist in their own strange world of fantasy and dreams, and whose intense relationship ends in a murder. This movie had images which endured in my mind for weeks after I saw it. Cobb featured the year's most ferocious performance with Tommy Lee Jones playing Ty Cobb, this century's first baseball superstar. Even though the subject was a baseball player, this is not a baseball movie. No, instead, it's a devastating depiction of the dark side of a legend, a bitter old man at the end of his life trying to bully a sports writer into writing a whitewash biography. And finally, a man of no importance starred Albert Finney as a Dublin bus conductor, hiding a guilty secret and planning an amateur production of Oscar Wilde's Salome.
You're clever.
We have a drama group, the friends and I. And it's the age of St. Melvin. Acted a perfect princess.
Oh, Princess, do you like this Savara?
No, I mean, princess in the play, Salome. Come on, come on.
Just go on down with the hair. And got the head of John's back to on his head.
Yeah, you know it. And it's time. They're doing this right.
actress Sarah Fitzgerald there, and Albert Finney is just wonderful. His performance is earthy, it's funny, it's also very sad. But, you know, the only one of the movies on this part of your list where I split with you again, and I've got to disagree, is Cobb. I thought this was a one-note movie that makes its point again and again, and ends up making you feel trapped for 2 hours in the dark with the most disagreeable person you've ever met.
And the result is a riveting performance that is a ferocious portrayal that jumps out of the screen onto you and just envelops you. I found it one of the most amazing, but it doesn't have to be pleasant. Cobb was not a pleasant
I
man.
know, but it doesn't insight in the first 10 minutes and then just repeats.
I think he's going to get an Oscar nomination if more people see the film. I think if he had 4 films this year, I think this is his best performance, Tommy Lee Jones, and I think it's a film I, for one, will never forget.
Again, I respect the performance. I just thought the film was very limited with what sort of a one-note Johnny. And, you know, what's most interesting, I think, about both our lists is one of the films we both left out, and that's Pulp Fiction, the most discussed and acclaimed movie. Yeah, you hated
every frame of it.
You know, I won't say I hated every frame of it. I respected some of the artistry, but I really don't understand all the fuss. I mean, okay, one thing you got to say is I don't think Bruce Willis or John Travolta have ever been so adequate. But the fact is that what people are interested in is Quentin Tarantino with a personality.
I think it's the Emperor's New Clothes. I mean, he is the director of the moment, and he's the emperor. He's the director that people want to know more about and want to see. But I don't want. I'm tired of all of the disgusting scenes he includes putting in his movie.
What everybody says is, first of all, the shock value of the film. I've never seen anything like it before. But they talk about the story of Quentin Tarantino. He worked in a video store. He didn't go to college. He didn't go to film school. And all of a sudden, at 29, he's this genius. Well, that's a different movie. That's called the Quentin Tarantino movie. Quentin Tarantino story. It's not the movie Pulp Fiction, which strikes me as rampagingly mediocre.
Well, let's get back to my picture, Joe. I saw The Swan Princess
Great
alone on a Saturday morning to meet a deadline. You know, who wants to see an animated film alone on a Saturday morning? The litmus test, I came out in tears, and I don't know if anybody else is going to pick this film. It is one of the best animated films of the year.
You know, I didn't quite pick it because I didn't think the animation was quite up to Lion King, but it's a lovely movie. Kids will adore it, and I think the music is actually better than Lion King. Well, now, when it comes to our respective choices for the very best, the #1 movie of 1994, I almost hate to admit it, but for the 3rd year in a row, darn it, we agree. And in 1992, we both chose Enchanted April as the best of the year. And last year, like everybody else in the universe, we picked Schindler's List. And this year, no surprise, we both make the fairly obvious choice of Forrest Gump as the best movie of 1994, and it's also a clear front runner for a number of Academy Awards.
And now for the moment we know you've really been waiting for, right? Our list of the year's worst films, starting with mine. Trading Mom with 50 SpaceX kids trying to trade her in for someone else. They should have traded in the screenplay instead. The Cement Garden about incest and necrophilia. Ugh, not exactly the ones to see for the holidays. The Cowboy Way with cowpokes Woody Harrelson and Kiefer Sutherland were turned into a bum steer. The Road to Wellsville with Anthony Hopkins as a quack doctor prescribing frequent enemas, a treatment I thought the screenwriters richly deserved. A Good Man in Africa from the director of Driving Miss Daisy, this time driving me insane. The Specialist with Sylvester Stallone, appropriately cast as an expert on bombs. Cabin Boy with Chris Elliott, which spoofed Captain's Courageous, but which demanded courage from the few moviegoers whose seats, unfortunately, faced the screen. Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, an incomprehensible mess, edited with a chainsaw about a woman with a gigantic thumb problem. Well, some other movie would have been a better choice to see. Clifford, Martin Short, in an annoying movie about an intrusive brat, which turned into an ode to euthanasia. And hands down the year's worst, Mixed Nuts, a stupefying attempt at comedy in that mecca for laughs, the Suicide Hotline Center on Christmas Eve. This was one holiday gift you'll wish you could take back.
A lot of agreements, that's for sure, because here are my choices in ascending order of awfulness. Exit to Eden, which pushed moviegoers to the exit, a flaccid sex comedy with Rosie O'Donnell and Dan Aykroyd in black leather. Radioland Murders, a comedy about radio's golden age, but with so much dead air. House of the Spirits, an all-star snooze fest of bad casting and overacting that teamed Meryl Streep and Glenn Close for the first and surely the last time. Mixed Nuts, a rancid Christmas confection that was about as welcome as a stale fruitcake. Trading Mom, with the 3 worst performances of Sissy Spacek's career, since she played 3 different characters, all with appallingly bad accents. North, with Bruce Willis as the Easter Bunny. The Color of Night, with Bruce Willis as a shrink. Wagons East, that marks the late John Candy's last and least movie achievement. Lightning Jack, with Paul Hogan sucking rattlesnake venom out of his co-star's behind. And the worst of the worst, Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, Tom Robbins' hippy-dippy novel turned into Gus Van Sant's gritty, dreadful film.
Boy, I'll say, who was the studio executive who said, we'll take Uma Thurman, put her in a movie called Even Cowgirls Get the Blues, put two giant thumbs on her and hope people will see it?
Well, I think the idea was that kind of equipment should have a future as a film critic.
Not on this show.
Thank goodness. But I got to tell you, I couldn't help but notice that two of the movies on my worst of the year list were movies that you found something nice to say about. You were a lonely, courageous voice on behalf of Radioland Murders, which was so frenetic and annoying. And also you had nice things to say about North, which to me was director Rob Reiner's unspeakable adventure into Kitty Wayward.
You don't come into this argument with clean hands or thumbs. You like Clifford, an annoying comedy. You're entitled to it. So that's it for this week's show. Join us next week for a special sneak preview. With Angel Mania sweeping the country, we present Hollywood's Angels, a look at some of history's biggest stars playing the most memorable and inspiring of all heavenly messengers. That's Hollywood's Angels on the next sneak preview. I'm Jeffrey Lyons.
And I'm Michael Medved. And until next time on Sneak Previews, don't forget to save us the aisle seat.
Michael Medved and Jeffrey Lyons will return with another edition of Sneak Previews next Saturday at 4. And speaking of movies and movie stars, we've got a wonderful double feature for you tonight here on 11. First, the movie legend recounts her own life and career. It's Katharine Hepburn, All About Me, tonight at 8. And then Hepburn stars as a bright young rich girl who decides to steal her sister's finance. Cary Grant also stars in Holiday tonight at 9:10.